Okay, Jeff, to quote the reviewer, Frederick Manning, who's talking about Arnold Toynbee, he says, quote, "It was advisable that a translator from Greek into English should know at least one of the two languages with which he deals."
Welcome to Gurgle, a bite-sized podcast from the creators of Ad Nauseam. Looking to whet your appetite for the classics? Gurgle will tickle your taste buds and leave you wanting more. And now, from the vomitorium, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
So, Dave, let's get right into it.
Okay.
So we're talking about this article by one Richard Whitaker,
Right.
entitled Homer's Odyssey 3 Ways, Recent Translations by Verity, Wilson, and Green.
Correct.
A fairly recent article, 2020.
That's right.
And so we're talking about kind of 3 new translations of Homer's Odyssey.
That's right. And
Yep.
it's very current because this new film coming out by Christopher Nolan
Yeah.
apparently is based on the Emily Wilson translation.
That's what I have read as well.
That's
Yep.
right. So
Yep.
this is from Acta Classica 2020. I first came upon this article by listening to a podcast with a young woman named Jaira Gorda,
Okay.
who is a very brilliant young woman, great Greek scholar, and she was talking about the Wilson translation with respect to another translator, and she mentioned this article.
Oh,
so I thought,
okay.
I'm going to go look it up, we're going to read it, and here we are gurgling.
Yeah.
So we got 3 translations. The first is by A. Verity and W. Allen. The second is by Emily Wilson, which is going to get the majority of our attention. And the third is by our friend Peter Green.
The great Peter Green.
That's correct.
He of Brackish Tang fame.
There you go,
Yeah.
Brackish Tang. So we're on page 1 of this article. And to begin with what Whitaker says, he says, if the word translation is to be used in a very broad sense, that is, not in terms of artistic reinterpretation, then we need to distinguish between translations, says Whitaker. A distinction must be made on the purpose for which a translation is made. In the case of the 3 books under review, 2 of them published by university presses, that would be Verity and Green, the third by a major provider of college textbooks, that would be Wilson, right?
Yep.
From Norton. Their leading purpose, this is really important, is clearly to present Homer's Odyssey to first-time readers of the epic, and especially to university students as texts for study.
Yeah, I thought that distinction was really, really helpful. You know?
Absolutely.
and it was in a way that I hadn't really thought about it before.
Right.
That, I mean, I always when I pick up a new translation, I'm always thinking about it in terms, well, you know, how clear is it? You know,
Right.
how close it is to the original
How
language.
readable, things like that.
But the idea of like who this is specifically for,
Yes.
I think is a really important
Absolutely.
question to answer. Yeah,
That's right. To use a quick analogy here, the late Eugene Peterson, who did a paraphrase of the scriptures called The Message.
Yes. Yep.
Now, that's gotten a lot of flack, right? Some of it deserved, but in fairness to him, he says right at the beginning, this is an interpretation. It's not a translation.
Yes,
So
yes.
you might not read it, you might not use it to preach from or for scholarly work,
Yeah.
but there are other reasons to translate things or
Yes.
interpret them.
Yes, exactly right. Yep.
So we go on to page 2, and as Whitaker develops his theme, he says, although prior knowledge of the Odyssey may enhance readers' enjoyment of such versions, here he's talking about James Joyce and other artistic interpretations. He says those versions are to be judged as autonomous works of art.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was also really helpful.
Yes, exactly. I think of it in terms of also it basically like, oh brother, where art thou?
Right.
Right. As a very kind of loose adaptation interpretation of the Odyssey, not meant to be kind of a one-to-one stand-in for the epic itself.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So you are currently reading Crime and Punishment, right? You're not a student of the Russian language.
Right.
You could reinterpret Crime and Punishment based on your experience.
Yes.
And that would be interesting, right? Crime and Punishment through the Winkle filter.
Yeah.
But it would be judged as an autonomous work of art.
Right.
Not as Dostoevsky's mind.
Of course.
Which is what a translation is actually trying to do.
Exactly. All right, so let's dive in. This is on page 2 of
Yes.
the article, where Whitaker writes, of the 3 Odyssey translations under review, Emily Wilson's is certainly the most unusual and will therefore receive the most attention here. Her version appeared amid a barrage of positive publicity. The great and the good endorsed the work. Sorry.
What does that mean?
The
I
great
wonder.
and the good endorsed the work. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
In my judgment, however, Wilson has not produced an academic translation, that is, one suitable to be recommended to first-time readers or to undergraduate students of epic, though it may interest readers who already know the Odyssey or those concerned with translation as a process. I mean, so this was a translation that arrived in my mailbox unbidden.
Yeah.
It was kind of, because of being a professor, and
That's
it was
right.
one of these things. Hey, use this book in your myth tag.
You're
going to
want
class.
this.
Right, you're going to want this, right? And I haven't read her translation, cover to cover, but my sense is from what I have read and what I've read about it is that I'm with Whitaker here.
Yes.
It was written for a particular moment with a particular kind of axe to grind.
Apparently, yeah. So let me continue with what Whitaker says on that same page. The two great novelties of Wilson's Odyssey are the way she represents a group of characters that we might term underdogs, notably the Cyclops and the suitors and their allies, in a sympathetic light, while representing Odysseus as, on balance, reprehensible. The big problem, however, with Wilson's heterodox approach to the characters of the Odyssey is that she can sustain it only by distorting and misrepresenting what the Greek text says. Now, those are fighting words.
Those are fighting words, right? Now, in a broad sense, in some ways, I am.
Yes, I know.
Sympathetic to Wilson's approach here.
Yes,
but I see it not necessarily as maybe not maybe a distortion is the right word, but an overcorrection.
Correct.
And so I think that there are some aspects of looking at the Odyssey, just seeing Odysseus as an unvarnished hero,
correct,
who's just simply doing what he has to do. I mean, I think there are things in the Homeric text, and from what we know of the Greek world, where if we look at through Odysseus' actions through the lens of hubris, and seeing kind of his some of his actions through comparing it to kind of Achilles' madness,
right,
in the Iliad, I think that's worth doing.
Right.
But here, Emily Wilson seems to have kind of taken the complete other direction, and let's make him a villain.
Right. So when we were at MJCL back in January, and that student asked you that good question, isn't the Cyclops, isn't Polyphemus kind of the victim because Odysseus barges into his cave and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
You, of course, very sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
I said no.
Yeah.
Right. Monsters deserve to be killed. Full stop.
Yeah.
But the problem with what Wilson is doing is not that that's her interpretation, at least according to Whitaker, which is fine. Interpret it that way. Don't represent it as an academic translation.
Yes.
Is Whitaker's point.
Yeah.
Don't represent it as accurately what Homer is saying for the uninitiated.
Yes, exactly, right, and that's a key point.
Okay, so let's move on then to page 4 and get into some of the examples. Here, Whitaker writes, Wilson repeatedly tries to prejudice her readers against Odysseus in subtle and not so subtle ways. At the very start of Odysseus's long narrative of his wanderings, she warns the reader against believing anything that may follow by extracting from Polymetis, the hero's stock epithet, wily Odysseus, the Lord of Lies. Again, lying Odysseus, book 24, line 303, for Polymetis. Wilson also trivializes the actions and emotions of the hero. So Peter Green translates Polymetis as resourceful, while Verity, the other translator, says the man of many wiles. So how do you feel about those three representations, Jeff? What do you think, as someone who is a veteran teacher of the Odyssey?
Right. So one of the things I try to get my class to consider and talk about is what makes an action moral,
right,
in the Odyssey, right?
What constitutes a lie?
What constitutes a lie, right? And really trying to get students to kind of set aside, their kind of contemporary prejudices, right? So a lot of contemporary students don't like that Odysseus is a braggart, right? They don't like that. Heroes shouldn't brag; they should be humbled.
That's right,
right? Well, I mean, I think that's coming from a kind of a Judeo-Christian ethic that's kind of been absorbed into the culture, not from 3,000 years ago.
True.
And so I think the idea is that, well, from an ancient Greek point of view, of course heroes brag.
Right.
That's what they do. And here with the Polymetis, I think that one of the things you could argue with the Odyssey is that because Odysseus has metis, has that particular kind of crafty, cunning wisdom,
cleverness, shrewdness,
which is embodied, of course, in Athena.
Right.
Is that just the expression of metis is inherently a good thing.
Right.
From the ancients. So here, where Wilson changes it to Lord of Lies or lying Odysseus, I think she is misrepresenting the ancient Greek way that they would see that that concept.
So as an interpretation, but it should be declared as such, not as this, again, academic translation claiming to represent accurately Homer's thought.
Exactly. And as I often tell my myth classes too, is I think these myths are meant to be reinterpreted.
Yes.
That's ultimately a good thing. These things, live and breathe. And the reason that they go on is because we can retell them. However, that's a different thing than trying to produce something that is accurately reflecting the ancient world itself.
Right. So
I would guess that maybe someone like Wilson would say, well, that's impossible anyway.
I was just going to say that.
Right.
Here's where a kind of intellectual relativism probably enters the conversation.
Yes.
Well, we can't know perfectly Homer's thinking, right? So they would say then, I can do whatever I want with it.
Exactly.
The second part doesn't seem to follow, right? I grant no one can know exactly and with a kind of scientific accuracy Homer's intention. But clearly we can see some interpretations are closer than others.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right. And as a translator, I think, whatever your approach is, you're kind of duty bound to kind of explore the range of meanings that the words had in their original context before you kind of arrive at kind of what you land on.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Let's look at some other examples. If we go on to page 5, for example, we're talking about the city sacker. So Verity refers to him as the city sacker. He skewered Eurydimus. Finally, Wilson, says Whitaker, consistently exaggerates the violence and blameworthiness of Odysseus's action. Just 2 instances out of many will have to suffice. While Green accurately has Odysseus threaten the beggar Iris. Remember the punching match? Quote, I will splatter your breast and lips with your blood. Wilson, following her own agenda, ramps this up to, I will crack your ribs and smash your face to bloody pulp.
Okay. All right.
So there's some, I would say, some charm of the idiomacy of her rendering.
Yeah.
And actually, if you remember, later on, Whitaker will pay her a pretty good compliment about how she construes the flowing tresses of Calypso.
That's right.
That was very nice.
That's right.
But on the whole, she takes too much license in her characterizations.
Yes, I agree. Yep. Even as that paragraph continues, Whitaker writes, later when the suitors have been killed, Wilson has Odysseus himself, most implausibly, talk of their killing as murder, right? And even kind of framing it in that way.
That's right.
At the same time, I think that, not considering some of the fallout of what Odysseus has done to the men of his island and the surrounding islands, is kind of leaves you short.
I agree.
But to kind of turn it into turning the whole thing on its head, I think Wilson is going too far, or she has again another agenda.
That's right.
In place.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that seems like a really silly thing for her to get wrong, because it's one thing to claim the suitors' families thought it was murder.
Yes.
Okay, sure, maybe so, and maybe in some meta sense, if we want to consider the poem on moral terms. Maybe we would conclude it's murder.
Right.
I don't, but maybe somebody would. But it's in the mouth of Odysseus himself.
Yes.
And murder, by definition, is an immoral taking of life.
Right.
So he would never have called it that.
No, of course not. Again, to consider the original Homeric world, we're talking about a world where taking revenge is a way of kind of correcting things, right? And Wilson also clearly downplays the aspect of the suitors had threatened
their wickedness
and plotted to kill Telemachus.
That's right. So let's look at that next part in verse on page 5, because I like how Green takes this epithet, this huperbion hubrin. So she says, in strong contrast, Whitaker says, in strong contrast, Wilson does her best to play down the wrongdoing of Odysseus's adversaries. Of the suitors, she argues that, quote, greed, ingratitude, and rudeness are annoying, but rather trivial faults. End quote. The suitors may be boorish, selfish, immature young men, and, quote, unpleasant to be around, but, quote, the murdered boys perhaps didn't really deserve to die. Wilson fails to mention that the suitors actively attempt to kill Telemachus.
There we go.
Isn't that a major omission?
Right. And I think another thing that Wilson obviously ignores or is not aware of is the importance of stuff. Right. And so my students will often ask, like, well, Odysseus is a king, he's rich. Why does it matter so much that the suitors are drinking all his wine?
That's really something ezy for an undergrad to say.
Of course, right. Well, and it's very easy for Wilson to ignore.
Yeah.
But the idea of one's time, one's honor, is equivalent to your pile of things.
Not to mention
Right?
the difficulty that goes with acquiring anything.
Yes.
At least for some, maybe I'm talking like old man here, but for someone like Odysseus, I mean, it takes a lot of time to accumulate stuff
Exactly.
of any amount.
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
do we want to go on here to this hyperbion hubrin, which is in the middle of page 5?
Yeah. Read that,
Okay,
please.
so the point is best made, says Whitaker, about this prejudice by comparing Wilson's with more accurate translations. Odysseus, Book 16, line 410, speaks of the suitors hyperbion hubrin, which Wilson translates far too mildly as ungentlemanly suitors.
Well, that's terrible.
Verity says men of violent insolence, which is pretty good because you have hubris there. That's our adjective, right?
Yep.
Kind of moral outrage and overpreening. But then hyperbion is something beyond all measure,
Yes.
right? And Green calls them so outrageous and arrogant,
Yeah.
which I think really gets it.
Yes. Oh, totally. Right. And if you think about, hubris is maybe the closest thing we can come to be like the cardinal sin.
Absolutely.
Within a mythic construct. To say, just ungentlemanly.
That's right.
That's completely missed the point. Yeah.
Ungentlemanly is, I don't know, picking your nose
That's
at
right.
a formal dinner.
Exactly.
But
A
trying,
faux pas.
that's right.
Yeah.
But trying to marry, by force, the wife of a hero and kill his son,
Yeah.
it's not ungentlemanly. It goes well beyond.
Yeah.
Says Whitaker, in her summary of the action of Book 24, Wilson writes that the suitors, quote, behaved badly. Right, so they're men behaving badly.
Yes.
For the relevant line of the poem talks of men who, quote, in their criminal folly, perpetrated a monstrous wrong. So that's Peter Green.
Yes.
So let's pivot, Jeff.
Please.
That word's never going to die.
No, never.
Let's pivot to Polyphemus and the Cyclops. Did you like what Whitaker had to say here about the way that this character is represented in the three translations?
I really did. Yeah.
Tell us more.
Let me read a little bit here. So Whitaker writes, translating in the same tendentious manner, Wilson would have us view Polyphemus the Cyclops as a sort of pre-lapsarian pastoralist, more sinned against by a devious, violent, proto-colonizing Odysseus than sinning. Right. So there too, I mean, even the language of proto-colonizing.
That's right.
Whitaker is nodding towards, current or fairly recent academic, post-colonial theory,
Right.
of looking at everything through a more kind of Marxist lens of
Yes.
oppressor and oppressed.
But Polyphemus ate people.
Yes.
Isn't that a bright line?
Right. Well, I mean,
You're not a pastoralist if you eat people.
I agreed. I do think that Homer makes this really kind of interesting, and there is a knife edge bit that the Cyclops, he speaks, he acts, he kind of looks like a human,
Okay.
but he's clearly not a human.
Okay.
And so I think Homer invites us to kind of think about his actions, like who is he? Is he a shepherd or is he a beast? Is he a monster?
Yeah.
And so I think, like I said, I think Wilson's take on poor Polyphemus,
Right.
the victim, is an overcorrection. By going in that direction, you do, I think, raise some interesting things that I think are there in the text. Yep.
So look at how she entitles Book 9 of the Odyssey. This is at the bottom of page 5. She gives it the title, A Pirate in a Shepherd's Cave. So she begins the work, says Whitaker, of directing our sympathies, and numerous tweaks and twists continue that work. When Odysseus retrospectively characterizes the Cyclops as, quote, a man clothed in huge strength, a savage with no understanding of either justice or laws, that's Verity's translation, Wilson translates a man of courage, wild, and lacking knowledge of the normal customs. So too, although Homeric pelor and pelorion always connote monstrosity, often together with great size, when the terms are used of Polyphemus, Wilson renders them just as massive or giant.
Yeah.
So big, but no notion of brutality
Yes.
implicit in them.
Right. I remember talking to you a while back about this very issue, and I thought you made a really good point where there is...
Me?
Yes. There is a part in Book 9 where Odysseus makes... he underlines how uncivilized this island is.
Right.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're making the argument, like from an ancient Greek point of view, the fact that the Cyclops is not civilized, he's on the other side of that line,
Right.
makes him monstrous.
Yes.
Never mind the way that he looks.
Right.
It's just kind of where he is on that divide. And from an ancient perspective, in some ways, he's kind of fair game.
Yeah. Well, with complete disinterest, I have to say that's a brilliant point. Says Whitaker, Wilson deals similarly with Greek words expressing condemnation. After the Cyclops' first act of cannibalism, Odysseus says, "Sketlier go hardra ontes," which Green translates as at the sight of such bestial deeds. But Wilson neutrally says, watching this disaster. So in other words, it was just like a car accident? There's no moral component to to Polyphemus grabbing men and chewing them down?
It's very detached.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ah, man.
Well,
okay.
We need to go on to the question of pan-slavism.
Of course we do.
You want to read that portion at the bottom of 6?
Sure. Whitaker writes, another innovation of Wilson's Odyssey is its handling of slavery. She asserts, quote, the need to acknowledge the fact and the horror of slavery and to mark the fact that the idealized society depicted in the Odyssey is one where slavery is shockingly taken for granted seems to me to outweigh the need to specify in every instance the type of slave.
That's interesting. Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
I quarrel with the main premise here of Wilson's claim,
Okay.
which is that Homer is intending to represent an idealized society.
Right.
I don't think that's true.
No.
I think he certainly values certain elements of that society, the heroism, the beauty of the women, the loveliness of the landscape, and so forth.
Yep.
Clearly, those are really important to him.
Yeah.
I don't get the sense anywhere that he's saying this is exactly how human life ought to be. It's far more realistic. His portrayal has far more grit to it, you might say. I think he seems to take reality on its own terms.
No, that's very well said. I just a couple of comments here. I think that Wilson might be responding to kind of the glossy kind of Hollywood image of that, and not considering Homer at all, but kind of that that shiny marble, no trash on the streets,
right?
Kind of image of Athens and Rome. And second, this is another thing too, is I think when people like Wilson, or her use of the word slave here, she's lumping in kind of chattel slavery, right? Or the immediate go-to is, of course, the slavery in the American South in the 19th century,
right? Without
considering that slavery, big fat quotes around it, was a radically different, nuanced thing in antiquity. I'm not trying to kind of to defend slavery, but if you look at characters like Eurycleia or Eumaeus, they are technically slaves, I guess, but they've become part of Odysseus' household, rather than these are kind of chained and whipped. Yeah.
Good point. So pan-slavism, adopting a policy of what one might call, says Whitaker, pan-slavism, Wilson translates as slave or house girl, houseboy, a whole range of distinct Greek words for non-elite serving men and women. So amphipolos, maid-servant, oinokos, steward, old man, geron, old woman, gerus, or gune, nurse, drophos, chambermaid, thalamepolos, or honorable, well-born men, aneres, esthloi, housekeeper tamie, shepherd poimein, and guardian epiuros. She translates all of those by the one word, slave.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible flattening of some of the distinctions.
Exactly.
Even if we were to grant all of these persons have an inappropriate and immoral restriction of their freedom, which is an important point to make, you still don't translate them all the same way.
Right.
It just seems absurd.
Yeah, this one seemed to me kind of all the kind of the arguments against Wilson's translation, the most kind of egregious, right? And kind of brings me back to the point is that this is all well and good, but don't market this as a first-year text to students who are really trying to kind of understand the Greek via this translation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we got to keep an eye on the clock here, so I think maybe we want to skip over most of what he has to say about her errors in style, but I just want to mention one zinger that it's on page 8 that I heard from this young woman, Jaira Gorda.
Oh, yeah.
It was so stunning. So this is on page 8. Occasionally, though, says Whitaker, Wilson uses a higher register of language that I feel clashes with her otherwise plain and colloquial diction. So when he's mentioning Wilson's examples of plain and colloquial diction, he uses such examples as "you must be joking," which is book 1, "babysit," book 7, "she looked astonishing," book 8, "whooshed," book 10, "snuggling," book 10, "teenagers," book 11, etc., "glugs it down," "standoffishness," "games of darts," "cottoned on," "fluffy pillows," book 24.
I can't believe you didn't mention tote bag.
Tote bag. There we go. But, says Whitaker, this colloquial diction clashes with high register. So, for instance, she says vernal dawn, 7 days and 10, book 5, fleet-foot deer, book 6, wreathed about by boundless sea, book 10, Truly now their day of doom is near at hand, book 16. Dangers compassed round, book 17. And then this is the zinger. At one point, says Whitaker, the two levels, i.e. colloquial and grand, collide jarringly. Mighty Zeus, the god of homeowners. I'd hate to be in that HOA, you know?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. So Wilson seems to kind of fluctuate between like Alexander Pope.
That's right.
And
something really common?
Hannah Montana.
There you go. That's going to date us. But as promised, Whitaker does have a nice compliment for Wilson, getting something really colloquial. Jeff, can you share that, please?
Yeah, he writes, in a moment of brilliance that had me reflecting, why didn't I think of that? She translates the common epithet Euplochemos, well braided, as Demeter with the cornrows in her hair.
Yeah.
That is kind of a nice touch. And,
it captures the image, I would say, very well.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to wrap this up, but let's have just a couple of comments here about the other two translators, namely Verity and Green of Brackish Tang fame. And we go down to maybe page 12 here. So Green's Odyssey opens with an uneven, quirky introduction, seemingly aimed at expert Homerists rather than Greekless undergraduates. The latter would be baffled by Green's lengthy discussion of narrative implausibility and inconsistencies, etc., and although it could be familiar to them from a TV series like Mad Men, 21st century readers might be taken aback by Green's occasional old-fashioned laddish sexism.
Now, is he saying there? Is he talking about Green's sexism in the introduction, or just in
the general translation?
The general translation. Okay.
Yeah. So if you look down in the footnote, this is footnote 38. This is comments on book 5. Our hero may long for wife and home, but chiefly because he has, very literally, a case of the 7-year itch. And Green translates Odyssey 15. This is respect to Odysseus with Calypso. He made love to her, a thing that fuddles the senses, or truly feminine women, even one that's well behaved. So there, Green is, I guess, indulging in laddish sexism.
Okay, all right.
And it's probably right. It's probably this against which Wilson is reacting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
What about Verity? He has some nice things to say about Verity as we close up shop here.
Yes, on the very last page of the article, Whitaker writes, as an example of Verity's translation, here is the opening of Odyssey, Book 22. Odysseus of many wiles threw back his rags and leapt onto the great threshold, holding the bow and quiver full of arrows, and there he spilled the swift shafts, right in front of his feet as he addressed the suitors. This terrible contest has now come to its end, but this time I shall shoot at another mark, one that no man has yet hit, if I can hit it, and if Apollo grants my prayer. So Whitaker then picks it up. Verity's translation produces no fireworks, though accurate and worthy it is often, I have to say, a little dull. But as a whole, his Odyssey earns the reader's respect as a careful, straightforward rendering of the original in mostly plain, direct English.
So that's good praise.
Yes.
If your goal is to introduce this work for the first time to Greekless undergraduates.
Right.
It's not for those maybe who have read it in Greek or read Fitzgerald, read Lattimore, read Lombardo, and so forth.
Yeah.
You may not want to start with Verity. Because you may want to start with Verity, but I'm saying once you've sampled others, you might develop a more specific preference or even learn Greek.
Indeed.
All right, so that wraps it up. Jeff, we got to get out of here. That's a gurgle, and we're done, but some very quick housekeeping.
Yep.
If you want to win a copy of 5 Comedies of Plautus and Terence from Hackett, send us the code word braggart in the subject line of your email to dave@adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V. Running a summer coupon on my intro Latin course. The coupon code is AESTAS, AESTAS 15. That's 15% off the Unit 1 Latin course. We got to thank 2 people, Jeff.
Yes, Mishka, our wonderful engineer, and Jeff Sheets, our wonderful guitarist.
That's correct. And we'll mention our 3 sponsors and then say goodbye. They are Hackett Publishing. You want to use the coupon code AN2026 to get 20% off your order and free shipping. Ratio Coffee. You want to up your coffee game. That's Ratio, it's ANRatio 2026 to get $20 off your entire order. And finally, if you still want to score some fantastic art, go to delachelpka.art, DELLACHELPKA, and enter this coupon code FINAL20. So thanks to all of our sponsors, and Jeff, I guess here we say goodbye.
Goodbye.